afternoon, coolest coast. It is time for Coffee on the Coast. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Coffee on the Coast. I'm your host today, Tina Prigge. I am delighted to be joined by author Baptiste Paul. Hi, Baptiste. How are you?
Well, Tina, thanks for having me. I appreciate this a lot.
Now, what's really cool is you are an author and you're living in Green Bay. And today we are getting inundated with they're calling it a wintry mix. I'm just going to say it is snow and it is building up. How are you feeling?
A little down because I had to drive in this thing. I am not a big fan of snow. Even though I've lived in Green Bay for so long, I am still not digging this snow thing. Not at all.
Does snow feature in your books? You write children's books, and I can see one in the background, a couple of your books. Does snow ever appear, or is it mostly about the Caribbean?
Snow does not appear in my books, but when my first book came on the field, I actually went out and I played soccer in the snow just so I could share with kids all around the world that, hey, you can still have fun in the snow. But most of my books feature tropical settings, a lot of them, and lush, vivid illustrations, because that's who I am, bright, colorful, and, you know,
I love it. I love it. So let's give people, I'm going to pull up a map just in case anyone's geography of the Caribbean is as weak as mine. So I understand that you are originally from San Lucia in the Caribbean. And so if we look, viewers, you can see Cuba just under the tip of Florida. And if you keep going around and around to the right, there's a tiny island, San Lucia. What is that like, Baptiste?
oh, it is the most beautiful place on the earth. Lush forest, green everywhere, beautiful sand beaches, and the food is just amazing. And the people are so kind and welcoming. It is one of the best places for me to grow up because I had a lot of opportunities just to be a child and be a carefree child running around, playing football, climbing trees, picking coconuts from trees, mangoes. It was just a fun childhood growing up on there.
Ah, it sounds amazing. And I imagine being surrounded by the ocean is seafood a huge part of the diet?
Oh, it is. It is big, 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 big. Like the last time I went down, which was in December, I went out to, one of the fisheries area, and my family has a friend, and I got there, and he just like gave me tons of fresh caught fish for the day to take home. And my mom loves it, so every time I come down, I gotta go find a fresh fish. And yeah, it's so good.
Nice, nice. And one more question about the area. So being on a small island, is the island closely connected to the surrounding islands? Are there ferries, boats? Is there an active water life, or do people stick to each island?
People do get around. I know there's one boat from St. Lucia to Martinique, and then it goes all the way up to Guadeloupe. But most of the other islands, like people do fly from one island to the next. Even though it looks really close, it's still a couple hours to get from one island to the next.
Oh, wow. Okay, I have to put the map back up. Yeah, because it does look so close, but so that's misleading.
Yes, yes, yes. Like St. Lucia is so much closer to South America than it is to the United States of America.
Nice.
Yeah.
So before we went live, you were telling me that love brought you to Green Bay, and your wife is also a children's book author. And so here you are, and you're creating books for kids, picture books. Your latest one, for example, Patchwork Prince. It looks like it's got the beautiful color and heritage of the Caribbean. Can you give us a little bit of a synopsis of the Patchwork Prince?
Yes, so this book basically is, you know, autobiographical in many aspects because it was like my childhood growing up. It is part of the struggle, the love, and how my mom could craft or create something beautiful out of trash. When I was a kid, though, that's what my mom and I did. We went to the dump and collect scraps of fabric, and that's what she used to make clothes for me and my siblings to wear. And it was always an adventure every single time we went. And she taught me the value of each color and the lessons about just keep working hard and persistence and determination in this whole story and in this book. Like my mom is such an amazing person in this story, and I would not have had this story without her. One quick thing about my mom that most people do not know, that she's illiterate, and she made it her point in life that every single child of hers got an education.
Wow. Yeah. That is so important. So is she able to read this book now or did no?
No, she can't read. I had to read her the story, and she cried. Like working on this book, even though it was my experience growing up, I still had to go back and do research. So I had to call her and ask her to relieve some of those really uncomfortable moments in her life where she gave so much, but at the expense of her. And she gave us so much at the expense of her as well. And we both had to relieve some really uncomfortable things in this story about digging into the trash to collect scraps of fabric. Also, like just the lack of kindness from people, especially the bus drivers who never offered or gave us a ride. And yeah, so it was a lot of pain I had to re-tap back into to write this story.
Is that kind of captured in this story as well? Do we feel that as we read the book?
Yes, you do. And one of the things I usually advise everyone to do, like any book that I have written, I want them to go to the author's note in the back first so they can get some really good background information as to why I wrote the story. And
Hmm.
if you do that, you'll get the true sense of what the story is about before you dive right into it. And it opens the door for a lot of conversation with students at schools about just recycling the environment, love, what is love, and just the different relationship dynamics that exist within families.
Right. And just glimpse into other ways of life, how life is being lived in different areas of the world. And like what you're describing too is a true mother's love, right? When a mom loves their child, they will sacrifice and do whatever it takes. How many books have you written, Baptiste?
Oh, to date, I have 8 books published. I have one coming out on May 14th, and I am really excited about that one. This one is called Dare You Dream Big, and it's a story about, I would say, love as well, and love for especially Black and brown children, or any other child for that matter. And the reason why I talk about like Black and brown kids, I wrote this story because I wrote this story because of 2 reasons. Like while I was working on this story, it was during the tragedy that happened to George Floyd in Minneapolis, and I had already written another story, a beautiful story called Play Ball, and that was in reference to a guy I met, a police officer I met in Florida, who was doing some really good work in the community. And later on, I found something that was a little bit disturbing, and I chose ethics versus having my publisher publish the book. I just found a video that shed light on some incident that happened prior that was not about uplifting Black and brown people. So I reached out to the publisher and I said, like, hey, out of good conscience, I just cannot go out and work on this story or have you publish this story. So I chose my ethics versus money during that story, writing, working on that story. So I was working on the other book, Dear You Dream Big, at the time, and I reached out to the publisher and I said, hey, since we're gonna pull this book, we got to work on the other one. And the story of love that came out of that, and telling like Black and brown kids, like, hey, a lot of things have been done. There's lots of systems in place to prevent you from being your real self, your true self. It's about like not being able to see yourself in certain spaces, but at the same time, you've been there. You've always been there. Your contribution, your faces have always been there, even though you never got credit for it. So it's a book about empowering Black and brown kids into every single space and own it and take it, and it belongs to you. And one of my favorite lines in the book is like, as you rise, extend a hand and bring someone else with you.
That's beautiful. These are powerfully big topics that you're talking about and really important, I think, to make available in a child's life. Did you get influenced by something similar when you were young that was like an aha moment that I can also do this? Or did you come to that realization as an adult that it was necessary?
I came to the realization as an adult, but as a child, an author never came to my school. I never had one ever come to the school at all. I didn't even know that was a job that was even available. And I gotta give my wife, Miranda Paul, a lot of credit at this point for supporting, encouraging me to keep writing my stories and opening doors in this industry for me to keep sharing those amazing stories. I think without her, I would not have been able to get all those stories out there, all those diverse stories, all those stories about inclusive stories, getting kids to see, a different world, a world that's slightly different than their own. So I got to give a big shout out to her because she's the one who encouraged, opened doors, and helped me get into that industry.
I love it. I love it. Well, you know what? And we should also mention, Baptiste, one of the reasons that we're talking is you will be in Manitowoc at the Manitowoc Public Library on April 30th, and you're going to be reading from your book, Patchwork Prince. And that happens to be Children's Book Day, or El Dia de los Niños. And you're also going to be talking about growing up in the Caribbean, sharing stories of your vibrant culture. This sounds like a really exciting and beautiful time.
Yeah, Tina, so you coming that day or not? Will you
I
be there?
I think I would love to. Do you
All
know?
right.
I don't know the time. Do you know what time the event is?
I think it's 6:30.
Okay, very cool.
I could be wrong.
We'll look it up. Viewers, to find out the specific details of the timing, go to manitowoclibrary.org. Their website will have all of the detail. Will you have copies of your book available that day?
Absolutely. I will bring copies of the book for sale and I will sign every single copy to whomever, any child, anywhere in this country. I will.
Nice. What's the age demographic for your books?
Usually I write between the ages of, I would say, 4 to 9, sometimes 4 to 11, because some of the themes in my work, sometimes it's really big and heavy, especially like with Patchwork Prince. That can even be applied to even like some college classes as well. Because in the past, I have gone to different universities and present on my work as a children's author. And a few years ago, even at high schools, I presented at multiple high schools. So as a children's author, I do have like quite a big audience, like adults and young adults and children. So some of the books, yeah, for sure, are for the younger age, but some of the other ones can be for the younger age as well as for adults.
I just want to point out the library did confirm that the timing of that event on April 30th is from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. So awesome. 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. on April 30th. And I want to point out that even though the book is technically considered a children's book, this event would be great across age demographics, right? Like I'm an adult, I don't have a child to bring, but I feel like I would really enjoy hearing the stories and learning more, right? So I think this event would be great for anyone to attend.
Yeah, I would love for the adults to come too because what I tend to do when I present on this book, because I need to give them the story behind the story, why that story came to be, why I wrote that story. So the adults can get to learn so much about just not just me as an author, but about my experiences as a child. And maybe somewhere along the way, they can take a little bit of the lessons I learn and apply it into everyday life and make a child's day better or someone's life better through some of the lessons I've learned, the hard lessons, that is.
There is so much value to sharing and hearing other perspectives, other ways of life that can be so beneficial. Let's go back to Patchwork Prince for a second. When was this one released?
This one was released in November of last year. So it's brand new.
Wow, very cool. And Kit Thomas, is that an illustrator that you've worked with on a number of books or just this one?
No, I just like when the publisher chose Kit, their family is from St. Lucia as well. And Kit lives
What?
in Cincinnati. I had the chance or the opportunity to meet Kit at an event in Chicago. The publisher got us together for an event in Chicago. And it's like a Lucian creators for that book. I was just so excited that we had two St. Lucian people working on this book
Yeah, that's an incredible mashup.
because she got some of the details in this book that I don't think another illustrator would have gotten. So
Right.
as you flip through the book, you check the pages out, you will see like the St. Lucian coat of arms in there.
Very
Yes.
cool.
So she got some really interesting details in there.
Cool. What are some other details that you want people to look out for when they read your book?
I usually want people to look at the story as a whole and look at the story from a different perspective and just a different lens. And I want them to maybe some of the lessons in the story that I want them to take is about hope, and that not every child who grows up in poverty was like really miserable or sad or unhappy. I want them to learn certain lessons or take away certain lessons that there's hope in all of my stories, even though I'm talking about some really heavy stuff.
Mm. Yeah, that's beautiful. That beacon of hope. Patrick Prince, you mentioned, is sort of autobiographical. Is that the only one of your books, or the books that have come before, were those also somewhat autobiographical?
I would say some of them are like The Field, which was my first book that came out. And that book is all about my experiences of playing football, soccer, in the rain, in the dirt, and the mud. And it wasn't until a few years afterwards that I really understood the true meaning or the impact this book had. Back in the day, the book came out in 2018, and that was when Skype was a big thing, and everybody was on Skype. So I Skyped with a school on the island, and during the question and answer session, one little boy just started to cry. And I thought I did something wrong or I said something wrong. And I was a little like, taken by it. I'm like, wow, I'm really hurting this child's feelings for my story. But he said no. He told me this is the first time he has seen the words that he speak, the Creole words that I speak, the Creole language, in a book published in the United States for kids to access all around the world. And he said the most important thing about this book is that the experience, my experience about kids playing football in the dirt, in the rain, in the mud, and running around and having so much fun. He said, that's me. I see me. And when I grow up, I want to be an author just like you.
What?
Yes,
How touching.
I know. I was not expecting that at all.
Yeah, like that's 100% what it's all about, right? Is to know that you had that connection
I
and
know.
touch that young life.
I know. I know. And every time I travel back to St. Lucia, I do presentations at different schools. And the last one I did, there was this one child who could not sit down. He was just dancing and jumping and just having so much fun. And all his teachers were just amazed at how much excitement that I could bring into a classroom.
Yeah. So you mentioned he then said he wants to be just like you. He wants to be an author when he grows up. How did you decide to become an author? What inspired you?
Wow. I've always been a reader growing up. And part of being an author is my love for storytelling. And in my village, the elders were so good at this. They could tell you stories, especially at wakes, and they can take you on some magical journeys around the world or made up places or creatures you've never heard of. So I was hooked from an early age. But as I went through school, that love was not nurtured by the teachers in who taught me. And over the years, like as I got older, and when I started, having my children, some nights I would crawl under the beds and I would tell them stories about my experiences growing up in St. Lucia. And my wife, Miranda, was always listening. She was always listening to the stories. And she's like, dude, you got to do this. You got to keep writing those stories. And like I said, a lot of credit goes to her for encouraging me to just keep writing those stories and trying to get those stories out there.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's excellent. So, okay, and then you also mentioned that you mentioned Creole, and Creole being the language that you'd speak on San Lucia. I think we don't hear that language here very often in Wisconsin. Can you say a few things to us so we can kind of get the flavor and the sound of it?
All right, so maybe a little flavor is the word I love you in Creole is like moi aime. And all of your audience probably could say that moi aime. Or il fait fouette. That means it is cold outside.
It is cold
It
outside. Oh
is
yeah,
cold
give us
outside.
one more. Give us one
All
more.
right. Mwen, mwen pasa SP, mwen desan Manitowoc pou we tout moun. So that is, I can't wait to get down to Manitowoc and see everyone.
Ah, that is awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing
Yes.
that. Well, is there anything else that you want viewers to know before we see you in Manitowoc on April 30th?
I travel the world. I'm always open to travel, doing school visits all around the world. So I hope someone in the audience or a couple of people in the audience will invite me to the schools or their communities or the different events to share my book. And I can easily be reached. You can go to my website. There's a contact form on my website, baptistepaul.net, and just send me a quick message of what you're thinking, and then I will link you up with my booking agent who's going to get all the details figured out so I can come to an area where you are.
And you said it was baptistepaul.net?
Yes.
Okay, so I've got it there on the screen. If you're looking to connect with Baptiste or looking for more information about him or inviting him to do a speaking engagement, baptistepaul.net. And then I just want to remind everybody that Baptiste will be in Manitowoc at the Manitowoc Public Library on April 30th from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. That is Children's Book Day, and he will be reading his latest picture book, The Patchwork Prince. We'll also hear some stories about growing up in the Caribbean, and it's just going to be in general a high energy celebration of culture, heritage, and literacy. So beautiful. I'm really, really happy that you joined me today, Baptiste.
Oh, thank you so much, Tina. And I'm looking forward to sharing my book with the audience in Manitowoc, the young people, the older people, and everyone. And like I said, I hope you can make it and just bring everyone down with you, your family, and everyone else. Just bring
I'm
them down to
I'm
just
putting
to
it
have a
on my
fun
calendar.
event. Yes.
Yeah, it sounds wonderful. Is it your first visit to Manitowoc, or have you been here before?
I've been down there quite a bit, but this is my first event at the library in Manitowoc.
Awesome. Well, it's going to be fantastic. I'm putting it on my calendar as soon as we wrap this up. So thank you again so much for joining me. My guest today is author Baptiste Paul. He currently lives in Green Bay, originally from San Lucia, and he will be in Manitowoc at the Manitowoc Public Library on April 30th. You're encouraged to come down and meet him, check it out, and books will be available. Thanks so much, Baptiste.
All right. Thank you, Tina.
We'll see you soon. Stay
All right.
warm.
All right. Have a great day.